Is it wrong if Iran supports Hamas?
I have obviously said that it is wrong to support Hamas, but
so it was wrong when Israel did that.
The question doesn't really make any sense because when you think
How
about
does it not make any
you're saying
sense
that
if
the United
Netanyahu
States,
was
because
supporting
you're saying
the
that the
terrorist
United States government is propping up Islam. I'm not denying the fact that our government. Okay, so I have a question for you then. Who is propping up radical Islam 1,400 years ago?
Yeah, but okay, so you don't want to respond to what I just said.
I just responded
exactly.
to
and
you.
This is,
the United States of America is not 1,400 years old.
This is such a cop-out.
It's such a cop-out.
I'm well-versed in the Israeli propaganda, but the truth is, if you actually...
propaganda.
Okay, the truth, it is. The truth is that if you actually...
This is their own charter.
Okay, well, let me talk for a second.
I am letting you talk, but it's not propaganda.
Well,
I'm not going to let you lie and say that it's propaganda.
No, I'm
this
not
is their
lying.
charter.
What I'm
this
saying
doesn't
is,
come
guys,
from
Israel. Let me trap
I
you
didn't
for a
say
second.
that
Go
didn't
ahead,
come
Dave.
from Israel.
Laura Loomer storms in like a drunk ant at Thanksgiving, clutching the Hamas charter like it's her golden ticket to bigotry, slurring Islam did October 7th, as if Hamas was time-hopping through 1948 with a Quran and a GoPro. Meanwhile, Dave Smith is gonna lounge back like a bartender who's seen this meltdown before, casually reminding her that Israel and the US help fund half the radicals she's crying about. But Loomer? She's out here blaming 2 billion Muslims, like a guy blaming Pornhub for his carpal tunnel. She's turning the entire faith into her personal boogeyman, while skipping over the facts that Hamas is the love child of occupation and bad foreign policy. Dave, cool as ever, is gonna torture talking points faster than a vape pen at a frat party, reminding the room that history wasn't and isn't written in Twitter rants and Sharpie scribbles. Strap in, folks, this isn't a debate anymore. It's a stand-up roast. FYI, this debate happened about a year ago, but Laura Loomer's patronizing and radical racism towards Islam is most prominent till this day, especially on her ex account. Let's jump in.
I will say that we need to have a conversation about Islam. And I just read the charter, and look, the Palestinians have been offered solutions multiple times, and they've rejected them, as you said. You said that yourself that they rejected this resolution in the UN in 1947, and precisely because they're not happy with anything unless it involves the complete eradication of Israel and the Jewish people. And so to say that, oh, we're not going to talk about all these land disputes and we're just going to make it a conversation about Islam, we're doing it at our own peril. Well, if you read this Hamas charter, and it's so important for people to understand, you can see within Article 8, okay, Article 8 of their own Hamas charter, and I brought this because it is so important for people to understand this amid all of the propaganda, okay? This is what these people believe.
What year was this first written?
1988. You can see for yourself. They say Allah is its target, the Prophet is its model, the Quran its constitution, jihad is its path, and death for the sake of Allah is the loftiest of its wishes. And again, the very beginning opening statement of the Hamas charter, which majority of the Palestinian people support, okay, it says Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it. It doesn't say until Hamas will obliterate it, until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. And so you're not going to, you could give them everything that they wanted. The Israelis have given the Palestinians 97, 98, 99% of the line items that they have requested in all of the peace negotiations. But the one thing that they want that is never included in those negotiations is the complete annihilation of the 15 million Jews left on this planet. And we have to be honest about that. People don't want to talk about it because they want to say not all Muslims. Yeah, maybe not all Muslims, because majority of Muslims right here in America have probably never read the Quran, okay? 80% of Muslims on the planet do not speak Arabic, okay? There's a lot of people that will call themselves a Christian, they've never read the Bible. There's a lot of people that will call themselves Muslim, they've never read the Quran. But if you are a true Muslim in one of the 55 majority Muslims in the Muslim majority nations around the world, okay, it is a form of apostasy to call for Islamic reformation or interpretation of Islam. There's no such thing as radical Islam. There's no such thing as moderate Islam. There's Islam. There is Islam, and that's it. And that's it.
As you hear her, I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond. But essentially, what you're saying is regarding the Hamas charter, that everyone's out there chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That's sort of the essence of what the Hamas charter is.
Yes.
When you hear that, how does that make you feel?
Well, I mean, I don't feel good about that. I think it's crazy. I mean, look, I think if my argument had been that Hamas are not Islamists, that would be a devastating rebuttal. But that's not what my argument is. Now, you can go through the history and repeat, listen, I'm Jewish, and like my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. My mother lived on a kibbutz in Israel for a long time.
My grandfather was arrested by Nazis in Germany,
saying,
I know.
I'm well versed in the Israeli propaganda, But the truth is,
This
if
is
you
not
actually
propaganda.
okay, the truth it is. The truth is that if you
This is
actually
their own charter.
okay, well let me talk for a second.
I am
okay?
letting you talk, but it's not propaganda. I'm
Well,
not going to
you're
let you lie
interrupting me,
and say
so-
that it's propaganda.
No, I'm
this
not
is their
lying.
charter.
What I'm
this
saying
doesn't
is-
come
Guys,
from
let me-
Israel.
let me traffic
I
this
didn't
for a
say
second.
that
Go
didn't
ahead,
come
Dave.
from Israel. I'm saying the Israeli propaganda is when you say Israel's offered them 98%, 99% of what they want, and they just won't take it. All this time, Israel is dying to give them a state. Like, just on the face of it, doesn't that kind of sound ridiculous?
But they
Israel's
whether it was the Oslo Accords, whether it was
Have you
Yitzhak Rabin.
ever seen Netanyahu's videotape when he didn't know he was being videotaped,
Yes,
when
I
he
have.
talked about the
Yes.
Oslo Accords? So what did he say? He basically said that he snuck so many poison pills into the Oslo Accord that it was completely unworkable.
But
That
he wasn't part of the Oslo Accord. That was Yitzhak Rabin at the time,
no, he was
wasn't it?
in the government. Yitzhak
Okay.
Rabin was the prime minister.
But he wasn't the prime minister.
But he was talking about how Israel ultimately got to decide what every military zone and danger zone was, and there was never. And then he just defined it as everywhere, as the entire West Bank. They never really made the offer. And if you care to go look into the history of this, you can figure this out. The point isn't that obviously Hamas is a radical Islamist organization. And by the way, just so we're clear on this, Laura, and I'm not denying that there's a problem with radical Islam.
But it's not
Of course-
radical, it's Islam.
Okay, whatever you want to call it. I'm not denying that there's a problem in the Islamic world. I'm not denying, obviously, you could look through the Islam. I'm a libertarian. I believe in natural rights and individual liberty. Obviously, I see problems in the world. However, if you're going to look at this as an American or as somebody who's supporting the Israeli point of view, and you're going to say, well, look at these savages. They're just so barbaric. Does it not give you pause for a moment that Israel, the United States of America, have for decades been intentionally, strategically, and explicitly supporting the most radical elements of Islam? That America has supported Saudi Arabia, the biggest exporter of Wahhabism in the world, that they've funded, armed, and trained Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and that it was, and I noticed this didn't get a response at all, that it was Israeli policy to support, prop up, and fund Hamas.
Okay, so I have a question for you then. Who was propping up radical Islam 1,400 years ago?
Yeah, but
But
okay,
no,
so
but
you don't
answer
want to
the
respond
question.
to what I just said.
I just responded
exactly.
to
And
you.
this is all right,
The United
this is what we
States of
do.
America is not
Yes,
1,400 years old.
This is such a
Why don't we do it?
cop-out.
Why don't we-
It's such a cop-out. Yes, you didn't respond to what I said at all.
You just said
Why don't we do
that
this? Hold on, hold on.
14,000
You just-
years.
Why don't you
Okay, fine.
respond to
You
his
just
point
blamed it.
and then
I
ask
just
him the question?
responded. I did
Why don't you
I did
address
just
his point
respond.
and then
Why-
ask your
yeah,
question?
actually address what I said.
He said, oh, we don't want to think about, the way that these people feel because of wars that have been, inflicted upon them by the United States of America, the war on terror, and,
No, that's
the
not what I'm saying.
but that is kind of the line of thinking that you're
No,
taking,
it's not.
right?
You're not
Like,
responding to what I said.
I just responded.
Why don't you ask her the question?
This existed
and then
long
let-
before
and then
the
you can
United
ask the
States of
question about
America
1400.
implemented
I'll ask the
neocon
question.
foreign policy.
Sure, okay. I'll ask the question very clearly, okay? If you're going to say that radical Islam, or as you call it, just Islam, is this problem, then how do you feel about the fact for the last, let's say, 60 years, the United States of America and Israel has explicitly funded, for stated strategic reasons, the worst elements of radical Islam? Hamas, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Wahhabism, and they've said they're doing it for a reason, to undermine their competing, interests in the Muslim world. How do you feel about that? Can you criticize Israel at all? Were they wrong to support Hamas?
I can criticize Israel, but
Were they wrong to support Hamas?
This is an irrelevant question because
You won't
Islam
answer it? You won't say it's wrong to support Hamas. Is it wrong if Iran supports
I have
Hamas?
obviously said that it is wrong to support Hamas, but
So it was wrong when
but the
Israel did
question-
that?
The question doesn't really make any sense because when you think
How
about
does it not make any
you're saying
sense
that the
if
United
Netanyahu was
States, because you're
supporting
saying
the
that the
terrorist
United
group?
States
Why don't you do
government
this?
is propping up Islam. I'm not denying the fact that our government, we have jihadists on payroll at the FBI. I'm not denying this, but you can't. Your line of thinking and the way that you came to this, came to this argument, Dave, is that when you look at them attacking Israel and you look at the outrage of these people, and I heard your debate with Austin Peterson as well, where you basically said it was an open-air prison, and you said that they're creating, a fresh recruitment program by bombing these people. This has existed for 1,400 years.
No, it hasn't.
Prior to the
It
creation,
hasn't.
prior to the creation of the United States government, this is an ideological issue.
You dodged my question
I'm
again.
not dodging your
You
question,
are.
though. But
It was a very specific
we can talk
question.
about land. Okay, we could talk about U.S. foreign policy. We could talk about the Patriot Act. We could talk about the war on terror. But at the end of the day, this is an ideological issue, and we need to have an honest conversation about Islam.
So with that being said,
But why can't you just answer?
I did answer your question.
You make no distinguishment between Islam, people who believe in Allah, and just radical Islamists?
No,
you don't think there's any difference whatsoever?
It says in this charter that the Quran
But this is a
their
Hamas's
constitution.
charter, though. This isn't the Quran.
But as I just explained, okay, here in the United States of America, people are brainwashed into thinking, right, because we have the First Amendment and freedom of religion here, people think, oh, that's how people get to practice Islam in all other parts of the world. There's 55 Muslim majority nations, okay? If you live in a Muslim majority nation and you're a Muslim and you call for Islamic reformation, or you say, oh, I don't really like that part about killing Jews, or that part about tossing homosexuals off roofs, or, I don't really like that part about killing Christians, you will be killed. That is a form of apostasy. Pushing for reformed versions of Islam, and I think you'll agree with me here.
Yeah, there's lots of places where that's true.
No, that is the standard in every majority Muslim country.
Here's the point,
and so
Laura.
Americans are not really living in reality, right? Because here in the United States of America, you do have what you call reformed Muslims who are able to live here, right? But if they understand that if they were to do that in their own countries where they came from, they would be killed for doing so.
So Laura's absolutely right about this, but let's actually live in reality. So absolutely, I mean, look, in Saudi Arabia, it is the shame of the world that you can be, they'll cut your arm off for stealing, they execute people for being openly gay, they do things that are just horrific. All I'm saying here is that, I'm fine with judging them, but when you're going to sit here as an American, a country that our government has maybe 100,000 times as much power as the entire Muslim world combined. We literally here in the United States of America, our president can make a decision if they wanted to, and any one of these Muslim countries doesn't exist anymore. That's it. Now, I'm not saying we've done that. We haven't nuked them. We'll just overthrow their government. But I'm saying, we'll just march in and kill 1 million of them and then overthrow their government or whatever. But if they wanted to, they can snap their fingers, and that country no longer exists. That's the power imbalance here. And with that power, we have propped up the Saudis since the 1970s. So I'm fine with hey, if you want to sit here and you want to judge other people, look, if we were a perfectly free, moral society, I'd be fine with us very sharply criticizing these other countries who just don't have freedom like we have.
Well, it seems like under Joe Biden, these countries are doing just well. He just allocated another $10 billion of funding to the Iranians today. And as we know from reports that have even been confirmed by the Wall Street Journal,
that was outrageous,
shortly after,
right?
Yeah, it was. And so you want to talk about the United States government?
Sure.
Let's talk about it, right?
Well,
Let's talk about how
if
today the
outrageous,
Biden administration, we want to talk about an
how about your
imbalance
boy
of
giving
power.
billions to the Saudis? Was that okay?
You're not going to get me to defend the Saudis. You're not
But how
going to
about
get
Trump?
me to.
But you won't criticize
to,
Trump for doing tens of billions of dollars worth of business with them.
No, I did criticize it. I did criticize it when President Trump was in the White House.
Okay.
And this is one of the reasons why I didn't receive the endorsement when
Laura,
I first ran,
listen,
I was demonized by the GOP because of my hardline stance on Islam, and this is why I got
well,
banned on all social media.
Good for you. Good for you if that's the case.
This is the hill that I'm willing to die on.
But do you understand then? But here, isn't this kind of interesting, right? Well, let me just make this point.
One point for you, David, then we're going to a video. But go ahead.
But as much as you kind of criticized the Palestinians, because look at this opinion poll, they support Hamas. But when we're talking about the most radical element in Islam, which is Saudi Arabia, you are actively campaigning for a man who poured in tens of billions of dollars to that country. So what responsibility do you face for that? Do you face for propping up the most radical form of Islam?
I'm not personally propping up the most radical form of
Islam. No, you're just voting for the person. No, you're just voting for the guy who does it.
President Trump, President Trump.
See, it's not fair anymore. It's not fair anymore to blame you for that.
No, he obliterated ISIS. He carried out the execution of Qasem Soleimani, and speaking of relations between the Israelis and the Palestinians, President Trump had his historic Abraham Accords and his Peace Through Prosperity program, which, he was trying to implement before the election was stolen, of course, was going to offer financial incentives to the Palestinians, because under the Obama administration, prior to President Trump, our government was sending millions of dollars of aid to the Palestinians every single year until, we were able to introduce the Taylor Force Act, which prohibited the allocation of funds to the family members of what they like to call the martyrs. And so did you know that the United States government was sending millions of dollars of aid to the Palestinians, okay, under the Obama administration,
and
then
billions to the Israelis.
And every single time, one of these jihadists would either murder an American citizen or an Israeli, mostly just a Jew, because let's be honest, that's what they're targeting. They didn't care if they were American Jews or Israeli Jews, because in the case of Taylor Force, who was an American, right, he was murdered, he was Jewish. They pay their family members. They pay their family members. And so I'm not going to sit here and allow you to, try to demonize the pay for slay program, try to demonize President Trump when President Trump, he was probably the most anti-Islamic terror, the most effective president we've ever had when it comes to combating Islamic terrorism.
Well, I'll tell you,
I will say that. And so it's not really nice of you to say that about President Trump, because
that's fine. I don't
he
care.
Obliterated, he ordered the killing of Qasem Soleimani.
It was a terrible decision. But
it wasn't a terrible decision.
Okay, listen, the thing is here is that I'm not a partisan and you are, so there's an asymmetry here where you're saying, well, Obama did this, but Trump, yeah, Obama was terrible. And the worst thing that Obama did in his foreign policy was that he funded and backed Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria, Libya, and Yemen. And to Trump's great credit, when Trump first came in, one of the first things he did, and it was one of the best things he did in his administration, was he ended the CIA program to back all the anti-Assad rebels in Syria. And this is what opened the door for ISIS to be destroyed, which, by the way, a lot of that was also Assad and Vladimir Putin. But I'll give Trump credit. He took part in some of that as well. But I really give him credit for ending that CIA program. But you know what he continued to do through every single day of his administration was continue Obama's war in Yemen on the side of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. So I'm just here where I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, so I can just criticize both of them.
I don't like either party. I can't stand the Republican Party. I can't stand the Democrats. I'm only registered as a Republican.
So guys, hold on. Let's
I support President Trump, who is hated by the Republican Party.
Laura Loomer just spent the whole debate playing history teacher off of a Facebook meme, waving her Hamas charter like it's a get-out-of-a-logic-free card, while Dave Smith calmly shredded her points like a paper napkin in a hurricane. And Adam Sosnick, let's be honest, he wasn't a moderator. He was a mall security guard on lunch break, letting Laura spew nonsense unchecked. This wasn't hosting, it was enabling. Laura Loomer doesn't need a bigger platform. She needs a good intellectual spanking from the likes of Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Professor John Mearsheimer, or even Ken O'Keefe, just to remind her what actual scholarship sounds like. Meanwhile, Dave, precision strike, no yelling, no cheap shots, just facts, history, and receipts. Laura's argument didn't just lose, they left the building sobbing. Now I'll ask you this, do we really need more debates where the host naps while bad history narratives run wild? Or should we demand a higher standard? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, y'all, and I'll catch you down in the comments. And we're just getting started.